Hi, this is my 2007 Subaru Liberty 3OR Spec B wagon. It has the 3-litre 6-cylinder engine and the 6-speed manual transmission. I've had this car about 2.5 years now, and it has 271,000 kilometres, of which about 45,000 kilometres are during my ownership. I'm the third owner of this car, and it's done me pretty well so far. I haven't had any major issues, just really maintenance and stuff like that. In terms of modifications, the car has a basic setup of wheels, tyres, suspension, intake, exhaust and a dyno tune. The coilovers are BC Racing Golds, and I've got SSR Type Cs and Michelin Pilot Sport 4 235/40 18 tyres on it. The brakes on this car are the stock size, but I have some DBA T2 rotors and DBA XP pads on the front, which really stiffens up the pedal feel. To get the tyres to fit without scrubbing too much, I've had the fenders pulled and rolled. Inside the car, it's fairly tidy as well. I've got some pre-facelift tuned by STI front seats, and besides that, the interior is pretty standard. The dash is a little cracked, but it's not too sticky, so it's an issue pretty much all of these ones have. It has a cob adjustable short shifter, and we'll look under the bonnet now. The engine bay is fairly standard, just with a Kobe alloy radiator and a Raptor air intake. I also have the JDM honeycomb grille on the car. Being a Spec B, this has the front bumper, the chrome side skirts, the bigger brakes, and stock it had Bilstein suspension. It also has an R160 rear differential, limited slip. The gearbox is based on the STI 6-speed, but it's not quite the same. It doesn't have the DCCD or front LSD, and the ratios are slightly longer. It is still a very nice feeling gearbox though. I do need to get some upgraded shifter bushes because the shifter is a little sloppy. In terms of exhaust, it has Raptor headers, two 200 cell Magnaflow cats, a third cat delete into 2 resonators and 2 oval mufflers. This is a pretty good setup I found for not much rasp and a good volume, but to be quite honest, for most people I would recommend just going with the Raptor headers and some mufflers. Keep the cats and resonator stock if you can to avoid rasp, unless you want to go through a lot of expense like I have to fine tune it. We'll fire the car up and listen to the exhaust. At idle, it's quite quiet. It's fairly unassuming in that regard, but if you get on it, it makes quite a lot of noise. Stock, the engine makes 180 kilowatt at the crank. I've had it tuned for 160 kilowatt at the wheels, and some pretty approximate math puts that around 200 to 210 kilowatt at the crank. I've tested the 0 to 100 with an app at around 5.7 seconds. I don't know how accurate that actually is, but it's a decent inclination that it's not a fast car, but it's fairly quick. Being the 6-cylinder, it has a lot of low down torque. The torque curve on the dyno sheet is extremely flat. The head unit does flash and flicker a lot of the time. That's a fairly common issue with the solder joints being cracked. You can fix that just by going with an aftermarket head unit, but I don't really need that. I've got a Bluetooth adapter wired in behind it, and that sorts out all of my music. I just ignore the flashing. It does also need a new subwoofer, as the original one is cracked, which is another fairly common wear and tear issue. Being the wagon, it has a ton of interior room. You can fit just about anything in this, even though it's a lot smaller than a lot of modern SUVs, especially once you push the seats down. This car handles quite good for what it is. It weighs about 1,500 kilos, but it has a lot of grip thanks to the all-wheel drive and the tyres. It will still understeer, so you do need to drive accordingly. I've found that if you run the front tyres at a slightly higher PSI, it makes the cornering a lot more neutral compared to the typical Subaru plow understeer. In terms of future plans for this car, I've got some aerospats to paint and install, but to be honest, I might only own this car for 6 to 12 more months. I mostly commute on my motorcycle now, so I don't really need a reliable daily driver like this. It is excellent at that task, but it's a little in excess of my needs. I'll probably be looking to get something lightweight, 2-door rear-wheel drive.